There are a number of things that you can do for free, tools you can use, how you collect data, that sort of thing, before you even worry about starting to spend money on things. And we more or less tell clients, please don't run into spending money until you have figured out all of the free things that you could be doing, and let's do those better.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's Rick Nuske here, and I'm on the line with Louis Amira. How are you, Louis?
Doing great. Thanks, Rick.
Now, Louis and I, for everybody who's on the call with us today, and thank you, by the way, for everybody who's supporting the show. I love your feedback. It's wonderful. Keep it coming. Now, just prior to the call, Louis and I were talking about, his time at Google, his time as I guess you'd say, an amateur pro golfer. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that and how he got to be where he is today. Now, just so you get a bit of a scope, he spent more than 7 years at Google leading up some incredible projects, which I'm going to let him talk about. But Louis, what we like to do, what I love doing, in fact, is giving my guests the opportunity to, I guess, give some context about your life and how it is that you've gotten to be where you are today.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey, as most folks have. Mine had a couple points of interest. I moved 20 times growing up, which was accidental. My dad is a golf professional, and my mom worked in the travel industry for the most part. So we had a little bit of a flexible upbringing and moved around to a bunch of different golf courses where my dad was the professional. And I joke, my parents got me plastic clubs when I was 2. Kind of as a joke, and I didn't really take it as a joke. So I started playing at a young age, eventually got fairly competitive, which maybe we'll get into, but had aspirations of playing professionally. Still actually have aspirations of playing professionally, just have a business career to get through first.
Mm-hmm.
And
just on the side.
Yeah, just a little business career on the side. And then, so played competitively growing up, got recruited, went to college to play golf. And while I was there, I actually wanted to do renewable energy projects. My passion was solar and wind. I won't say before it was cool, but in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, it was becoming cool. And said, okay, I want to go do that. And I joke that I was probably one of the only students in Harvard's graduating class that year to do an internship at a utility, electric utility. So from there to Google and to then starting a business with some friends, and we're off to the races these days. So it's been an interesting journey from plastic golf clubs to utilities to the world of growth marketing and starting our own companies.
Fantastic. Now, where are you located in the world?
For now, so like I said, I hop all over the place.
Yep.
Kind of a drop of a hat, but right now live just outside New York City in the suburbs, and spend most of our time in non-coronavirus times like we're all trying to work through right now, down near Grand Central. It is impacting all things in all different ways.
Oh, look, I hear it in my sleep. It seems to be omnipresent, and I'm hoping that the world shifts gears and moves past it as soon as possible so we can come back to some level of normality. But that's underway, isn't it? So, Louis, I'd love to learn a little bit about how, before we jump into the Googles and the rest of this wonderful call that we're going to be sharing today, I'm wondering how golf and the discipline behind golf has helped you, I guess, hone your skills as a business owner.
Yeah, it is one of the most individual sports out there. I used to say the most individual, but I have since been told that there are many others, and in trying to learn how to play squash and tennis and some of these other things, it's quite a bit different. But anyways, it's one of the most individual sports. You will never perfect it. As best I know, nobody's ever shot 18, and it's just something that you can always keep improving at. And it's not necessarily the harder you work, the better you get. There is an element of working smarter, which you'll see with the likes of Tiger Woods. He doesn't hit as many golf balls or run as many miles as he used to when he was younger. But there's that constant improvement, that constant, I call it like building the function within you to self-improve, that learning, that experimentation, all of that. I didn't know it when I was 7 years old or 12 years old that was what was forming, but that has taken taken shape outside of the world of golf. So yeah, playing against a bunch of people that are household names in the golf world, and losing on a very regular basis. I got used to rejection. I got used to taking bigger risks, and I got used to the drive of wanting to get better, wanting to grow, and that's carried quite a bit more of my ethic and principles and goals after my competitive golf career. I still play, I still compete, but I don't get nearly as angry when I don't play as well or I don't win anything. So that evolution.
It reminds me of an adage that somebody shared with me some time ago, is that you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And I suspect that applies to golf. You don't want to be the best golfer, otherwise you won't be able to step up to the next level. Does that apply, do you think?
Yeah, there are definitely some funny stories just to round out the golf part. That when I was growing up, my junior year of high school, the international audience, that might not make as much sense, but roughly age 17, right before you get ready to go to college, I was playing in the state of California here in the States, and I finished second in the state high school tournament to a guy by the name of Rickie Fowler, who was a fairly big golfer. And then I moved to Florida the next year, part of all the moves, and finished second in the state of Florida high school championships to a guy by the name of Koepka, who has won many major golf tournaments recently. So I used to think, if I can't win my high school state championship, I have no business trying to turn professional. Now, I didn't realize I was going to be losing to top 10 golfers in the world for the next decade. But no, to your point, like Rickie nor Brooks were the best in the world at that point. I mean, they were both in the top. We were all in the top 10 to 20 in the world. But the guys that were number 1 and number 3 and all that, they might not have developed the work ethic that some of the others did that were trying to chase those folks. And that's something that, you're right, to some extent. Some people, Michael Jordan with the documentary that's out right now, I mean, he had that inner drive, but some of the other people needed that chip on their shoulder. Maybe he developed his when he didn't make his high school varsity team. Like, you need that chip on your shoulder. It helps to have that chip on your shoulder if you use it the right way. And I definitely had that. And I had that when I was in college, and I was certainly not the smartest person. And when I got to Google, I was certainly not I was at the bottom end of the totem pole there. And I learned from those around me and relied on, hey, what is it that I could be picking up to get better? And that translated from golf into all of these other pieces as well.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is wonderful. I love the insights. Now, I wonder, in all of this, you're effectively talking about persistence and tenacity. I'd love to, I guess, go into that a little bit more and learn a bit about your mindset as it applies to being a business owner. Would you share that with the My Future Business audience?
Yeah, I was actually talking about this today with somebody that we're looking at hiring to our team. They asked, what are the values, what are the beliefs, what are the goals, and all that. And I said there are a bunch, and we all end up on the same page. But one of the biggest things that guides our future is incentive alignment. So it's really, if you align the incentives and focus on aligning the incentives, a lot of other things that could get complicated or miscommunications that could come up end up kind of getting solved beforehand. And I mentioned this on a previous podcast I was on. The story was very on in my career. I worked at a startup, and the startup was a former business school professor, and he was starting this small 10-person company. And he took me to the side and talked about pies. This was a couple months, I was 21, barely into my career. He goes, the thing about pies is don't worry about growing your size slice. Like, don't try and take more of the pie. If you make the pie bigger and your size slice stays the same size, you have the same chunk of the pie, you are going to have more pie in the future. And he goes, people love seeing the pie get bigger, especially if they don't have to worry about defending their share, their own slice. So those are some of the values, or at least one of the main values we look at. It's something that works within our company as we're trying to grow it and add more team members, but also something when we're talking with clients. We don't do some of the things that other companies do. We don't try and lock people into long-term deals. We do month-to-month engagements. We don't. We get very incentive aligned, and that when you look at it that way and you talk about goals and where you want to go and all that, it's easy to say, and people do it for 5 or 10 minutes. But if you actually act on that and set things up into place to capitalize on it, you do end up solving a lot of the problems down the line. So that's, I think, one of the core values in any chance I get. It's not just how do we aligning incentives, but looking back after the fact, you'll realize in other scenarios, hey, maybe they were misaligned, and that obviously would have caused some of these bad actions from other people. So anyways, that's one of the simplest ways to express the complex idea that how we approach things.
Thank you once again. I'd just like to highlight for everybody who's on the call today, Louis is the co-founder and CEO of Crimson Advantage, which is the business that he is heading up right now. But I'd like to, if we could, Louis, is to look at the progression from that point in time where you began your journey with Google up until now, and how that has actually positively helped you become a successful business owner. Where did your experience with Google all start?
Yeah, so I was at that. I did my internship in the renewable energy space before I was out of college, and I decided, okay, that was a little interesting. Things are a little slower. They have a different way of life there. They literally need to keep the lights on. That is their job as utility. I left that. I said I want something more fast-paced. So I ended up joining a startup for about a year that was doing some pretty cool things in the smart grid world, and like how to charge your Tesla at better times, that sort of thing, to really make the grid sturdier and welcome more renewables, which is everybody's goal. And it was a good ride. The company ended up going on and eventually got acquired. It was a good ride. But I left after about a year and talking with the founders, where they more or less said, hey, you have a lot of potential. The goals for what you want probably don't align with the startup. You probably want to pick up some of these other things, stuff that I look back and realize now, but I couldn't see then. I couldn't zoom out far enough. You should go and learn some of these skills from these bright people. And then it was about the same time that one of my good college friends was he was hiring onto his team. Like they were looking for new folks to join that marketing team, that partnerships team. And so I said, okay, great. I would love to go out there. So I ended up joining Google in the partnerships org. Technically it was marketing, but it was doing partnerships with companies like Shopify, which was a much smaller company in 2012 than it is now. So I started off in that org, worked on some cool marketing partnerships for things like Doodle for Google and Year in Search, formerly known as Zeitgeist, and a few other things in the marketing world. And then ended up taking a few other jobs in different parts of Google, which we'll get into. But it was that experience of seeing what the startup was like at a small point. I had that love for it. I said, yes, this is what I want, but I don't have the skills. I don't have the processes, the frameworks, and I wanted to inherit that as best as possible from some of the best business folks in the world that were working at Google at the time. And I feel like I got a couple decades of experience in that first 2 or 3 years, let alone the full 7 that I was there.
Yeah, that's it's oftentimes people that I speak with, they share their experiences either directly or indirectly with Google, and you touched on something a little earlier about processes. I wonder, what have you taken from your experience at Google that really solidifies how you operate your own business? What's the one key thing that you have taken from Google?
It's similar to that incentive alignment bit that I mentioned before, but there's you can leave. They do a negotiations training there for obviously the partnerships org, but sales and a bunch of other groups as well, where you don't have to take the best. You don't have to try and get the absolute best deal for you. If you leave something on the table or the other side ends up getting something better off, everybody ends up winning in that world. So that's one element of it that I think Google's particularly good at. They have arguably one of the best business models of all time in terms of Google Ads, but so they have the money to be able to not necessarily take the best deal in the short term.
Yeah.
But getting the deal that people are happy walking back to the table to negotiate again, that I think really builds good trust. And then something that a former Googler and now, or at the time, Twitter exec came back and spoke at a Google event. There are 150, 200 Googlers in the audience, and he said, one of the things that I didn't appreciate when I was at Google, but I left to go to Twitter and then had to negotiate with Google, you guys start from first principles, very similar to what Elon Musk talks about, and you construct your arguments, you construct the way you think based on, okay, what are the things that we know to be true? What are the fundamental facts? And you start building up your argument from there. So you might see some data pointing one direction, you might want to jump to a hypothesis, but you really look at it from the beginning and say, okay, this is true. Okay, great. We can only build this next layer knowing that these things underneath it are true. So you never really get into a bad spot. You're not making a series of assumptions or hypotheses built on a shaky foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And my team challenges me the same way. We all challenge each other to say, hey, I don't know how you got there, or yeah, you're assuming a lot of things on your way there. Let's focus on what things either we can control or we actually know is true. So those are a couple things that I think I took early on from Google. And it's helped us not end up in those precarious spots. People rein each other back in when you're getting a little too far out over your skis.
There seems to be a very strong culture of, I guess, I'm not sure this is the right way to term it, but your work and your life balance. Is that a strong push inside of Google?
It is for a lot of the teams. I would say you can self-select into certain things. I I never worked specifically with folks in Google X or in some of the other bets. There are some other research initiatives that are very interesting where I think they've worked quite a bit more. For the most part, it is if you are the healthiest version of yourself, you don't need to work more hours to work better.
Yeah.
And I think that I was reading a piece on Jeff Bezos recently where he was talking about the hours in his day and how he won't do really complex things later in the day when he's got decision fatigue and all that. And I think that applies to a large extent. Now, I will call out that there is one caveat, and that's Area 120 that I was a part of towards the end, the internal startup incubator at Google. We were, I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but there were many Friday nights where we were the Area 120, all the people working on our own startups within Google, were the only people in the building for a few hours after everybody else. And that's not to say anything, like the incentives were different for the internal startup group, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting, you can self-select into certain preferences or goals, whatever that might be. Google, I think, has probably the most flexible, well, I don't know if it's most flexible, but a very flexible culture of, hey, you're interested in that thing? Okay, go and try and volunteer with that team. Go try and learn from them. And eventually one day you might end up as a member of that team. That is one of the points that I think not enough people talk about Google's culture, which is really cool for learning and flexibility.
That idea of cross-pollination.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have, I won't forget, there was a project, I think it was called Project Link. That was the external name eventually, where they were bringing internet connectivity and a few other things into the sub-Saharan African continent. I think it was, I can't remember exactly the country at that point in time, but I was interviewing with the team and I wanted to join that team with my energy background and internet access, all that. I was sort of like, oh, this infrastructure sounds amazing. I'd love to be part of it. I'm fascinated by all this. And I remember I got to the final round interview and they ended up selecting a woman that had been the program manager for Google Glass for when Google Glass was still borderline cool. And I went, I would have picked her. Like, I get why you picked her. I would have hired her the same way. Like, you should not have hired me to that team. But it's the people that they get, even just internally interviewing for different roles. It's just, it's a really cool organization. You might not be an expert when you get there to whatever the team might be, but they trust that you are able to learn so well that you will pick it up fairly quickly. And that's something else that's like one of the core ethos that we have is, hey, you might not be an expert in the thing that we need you to be an expert in, but if you bring other perspectives or other skills, you will make all of us better off at those things. And we trust that you're smart enough to pick up whatever it is and probably do it better than we were going to try and tell you to do it anyways.
Yeah, I love that idea of empowerment. You know, they're giving you that opportunity as I guess the young gun coming into the organization. You've taken a lot of your marketing experiences from there and you decided to, with your co-founder, work to set up Crimson Advantage. Let's talk a little bit about that. What is the core at Crimson Advantage?
Yeah, so it started accidentally, so accidentally that I will say that we were kind of lazy in branding it. It was a group of old Harvard friends, and Harvard's mascot, or color, I guess, is the crimson. So we went that way and said, oh, well, if you have a bunch of Harvard people, maybe you have an advantage. It was not humble. It was not meant to be a Berkshire Hathaway or anything type conglomerate name, even though Berkshire Hathaway side story is also an accident, but we won't get to how Warren Buffett brands things. So we said, okay, what skills do we have that are overlapping? We have marketing, we have data science, we have some publishing, all that. We'll set up a company and see what things we could do. At the time, it was maybe we'll build some Shopify apps, or who knows. Let's go work with these companies that at the time at Google was helping companies that were spending anywhere from 5 and 10 million up to $100 million a quarter on Google Ads. So some fairly big and
Big
sophisticated
bucks.
companies. Yeah. Yeah, you don't really feel the thrill of life until you see an advertiser spend $1 million a day and something break in their account. I
Oh,
can assure you that's fun. Um,
I'll pass.
so yeah, exactly. So anyways, my wife and father-in-law, they own dental practices, and I said, hey, I wonder if I could grow their dental practices through digital. This is one of the old classic word of mouth, oh, who's your dentist sort of thing. People will look at Google and Google Maps, but dental offices don't really have Instagram pages. They don't really do YouTube videos. And we were sort of like, I wonder what we can do to help them out. And we had a couple other businesses that were friends that we said, hey, we might be able to help your couple $1 million revenue company grow online. And we found out that the skills that we had for the mega corporations actually not only applied, but were really successful for some of these smaller companies. And they just either didn't have somebody to trust, or they couldn't hire a marketing person, or this whole topic of agencies was scary because they've got ripped off in the past, whatever it might have been. So we started working with a couple companies, and we didn't even have a website, which is ironic for a digital marketing company, but we'll leave that aside. So eventually the investors and board members in some of these companies, as we got to larger and larger clients, started recommending us to their other portfolio companies and said, hey, can you help this company too? Hey, you've driven great success. So we ended up getting these introductions to more and more companies. And at that point, it was sort of like, oh, wow, we really should formalize this and figure out whether we want to be these agency kingpins in the future if we're lucky to continue growing, which maybe we'll come back to, is not really our end goal. But anyways, it just kind of accidentally grew into, oh, I guess we have clients now that we're trying to help grow. And we're still in that phase of taking on new clients. People have interesting business models. They have interesting challenges. Some might have physical locations. Others might have a $20 million business but never sold anything online. And we're helping everybody, what we call, demystify their growth. And anyways, in moving forward, we're continuing to build that, but we are really after this to see what the commonalities are between all of those businesses. If you're growing a couple dozen businesses across different industries and verticals, what is the shared thing that they all need? Like what's missing for all of them? And there are really interesting things that start to come out of that other companies don't really get access to. Dozens of companies to see their goals, what they're worried about, what's working, what isn't working. And I think that's that is another business alongside of our current business that we're setting up and exploring. It's what can we do with all of that, our learnings and our relationships, and what can we deliver to our current clients to make them better, which is what we're starting to do today.
Fantastic insight. Thank you again. I'm wondering, over the last couple of months, given this situation globally, have you found that you're having more touch points, more new customers coming your way? How's that landscape changing the digital environment?
It's been so somebody on, I believe it was either the Facebook or the Google earnings call. Who knows how well this will age into the future, but the Q1 earnings call in 2020. I think it was Facebook or Google. They said our direct response advertisers are actually seeing success, and our brand advertisers are cutting back. So if you were in a position to be selling things online before, you could transact, you have a cart, you can book something, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
There's less competition to some extent. And if you were good beforehand, you are likely getting better now. Now, if you're selling, I don't know, $15,000 luxury items and you didn't have many sales and those people aren't buying anymore, that might be a different story. But if you're selling things that are everyday items or make people healthier or happier, whatever it might be, those businesses are actually succeeding even more so. And some of the clients that we have are asking us, hey, where can we spend more? What more can we do? And the way that we describe it is some of these banners or videos or these ad spaces are actually kind of on sale right now because a lot of people, the bigger companies or ones that aren't run quite as well, are backing off. So given a lot of the ad space on the web is sold as an auction, if there are fewer participants and people aren't trying to pay as much, you can buy that same space on sale. So that's a long way of saying our clients that don't require you to be face-to-face with somebody or travel to a specific location and interact, everybody aside from that group has been doing quite well and arguably better than they were beforehand. We haven't seen a flood of new clients yet, but we do think that that's something that's not too far. We've had a handful in the last few weeks. Now that it hopefully looks like we're turning some sort of corner. People are starting to see how things work and what does and does not work. But we are very optimistic, which is why we've continued to hire people, take on new clients, and we're continuing to hire more folks today.
I wonder, the digital landscape being what it is it important for your traditional bricks and mortar type of organizations to actually have a presence online?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we probably all experience it in our daily life, maybe even more so now than before. So for some folks in the last week, they want to go to a restaurant or they want to go to wherever to just pick something up. Like, hey, I wonder if the wing stop down the street is open, or if that Italian place is doing takeout. You've probably seen Google Maps has actually, at least in the States, has stepped in, and they created a unit where you can go into Google Maps, see what options they have available, that sort of thing. If you didn't have a website before, or you don't have the ability to update your website to say, hey, we're still open, or hey, come at these hours, you're missing out on people that aren't even going to bother trying to look you up. That's just a restaurants as an example. But if you're not flexible enough to change your prices or change your delivery estimates or interact over email or chat, whatever it might be, we have one client that says, yes, we are still open. That's one of their banners. We're still open. We're still fulfilling our orders. We're able to do it in a socially distant way. That you are removing one of the barriers of a lot of your customers. So you might remove a step where 20 to 50% of people would have just stopped interacting with you. So yeah, I would say that it's table stakes that you have to have a digital presence for almost any business moving forward. And I mean, unless you have 2 or 3 clients that you're managing their, the hedge funds are the ones that we always talk about as a joke. Like, you go to a hedge fund site, they're managing $3 billion and they have a picture of a tree and a login screen. Like, that's the extent of their digital presence. They probably don't need it. No. Most everybody else does.
Yeah. I wonder if we take that on offline business that's just deciding, hey, look, I've found Crimson Advantage and I don't know what to do. And you've kind of touched on how you've used sales copy in the current climate. What are some of the first steps that you help that business to go through to help grow their business online?
Yeah, one of the first things we do, and we're trying to automate this, talking about improving our own business and how to grow. We'll do an audit of the landscape and see what it is that your competitors are doing. So it doesn't shock me anymore. It used to shock me how few business owners or employees of businesses would go and actually search on Google for themselves. And when you see the results, it's sometimes embarrassing. But when you go and look at your competitors and you'll see, oh, wow, they have videos, they have images, they've updated whatever it might be. You go to their Instagram page and you'll see pictures and videos posted every day. And it's sort of like, wow, I didn't realize everybody else was doing that. And I get it. I mean, people don't need to go Google themselves or anything that often. It's not like they're ordering their own products, but we basically open their eyes by doing that. Say, hey, you don't have to do it. There's a number of reasons you haven't in the past, but here's what the typical customer coming to you is seeing when they're looking for whatever your service is, or even just trying to find out information about you. We do that first just to say, here's what it looks like. That usually very quickly turns into the conversation of, okay, yeah, that's a problem. What do we do about it? And then we've got a pretty good formula, at least we think, for how we grow, what it is that you need to do for free first. There are a number of things that you can do for free, tools you can use, how you collect data, that sort of thing, before you even worry about starting to spend money on things. And we more or less tell clients, please don't run into spending money until you have figured out all of the free things that you could be doing, and let's do those better.
Yes, thank you. I always like to talk about the art of salesmanship. Do you have a relationship with external copywriters? How does the business work in that respect? Do you have it all in-house?
Yeah, so we have, this is actually interesting, and maybe potential future clients are listening to this. We have a pretty cool way that we operate. We've got a few folks that are full-time employees, obviously partners and full-time employees.
Mm-hmm.
They work across all of the businesses, all of our clients, I should say. I work with many of our clients directly. I want to see what's happening on the cutting edge, all that. But we also have people that work part-time. So we might have folks that can only work or only want to work 12 hours a week, or they only want to write 8 articles, whatever that might be. And we say, that's great. We love whatever amount of your time you've got. We try and persuade them to give us more time, but we don't need anybody to be full-time for a lot of our roles. If you just want to work on 1 to 2 clients, or you're the expert in this certain technology, great. We're happy to have you. And I think that is a tailwind before all of this, these COVID complications,
Mm-hmm.
where we were seeing success hiring people. We could take somebody and say, hey, if you just want to work for us 2 days a week and that pays you enough to live in wherever it is that you want to live, you don't want to live downtown in San Francisco or New York or Tokyo, wherever, yeah, you can live many other places, work remote, only have to do a couple days, and then you could be a musician or an artist or run your own business, whatever it might be. That's how we've operated in the past, and I foresee how we're going to operate quite a bit into the future. We're going to hire more full-time people, but we love that as a way to work with friends, folks that we've known or are 1 degree removed from, and also to find the people that might be full-time employees in the future. So we've loved that. We think that that's the way that more businesses are going to go in the future, and we're betting on that to some extent.
I love that idea of flexibility. I think nowadays, Louis, that people in general want that ability to control their own life, don't they?
Yeah, incentive alignment. What are your goals?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you want? I don't think people wake up saying, well, my goal is to have a 5-day-a-week schedule where I work from 9 to 5.
And
then
drive
I
an
get home.
hour each way.
Exactly. And honestly, my goal is to have a successful business career, hopefully make enough money to be able to provide for my family. And then if that's taken care of, I would love to try and play professional golf later in my life and play on some of the senior tours as I get older, like that.
Mm-hmm.
My career is, my life is not going to be based solely on, did I make a successful business? Did I work at a successful business? Anything like that. I love what I do. I love getting to grow companies. I love getting to help people grow their skill set and start their own companies like that. I really enjoy being able to do that day in and day out. I also have many other things that I enjoy doing when I turn my cell phone off and get away from everything. So everybody else, not everybody, a lot of people are like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to be able to work with those people, because telling them that they need to be in a specific office in a specific city, there are reasons for that for some businesses, but there really isn't a good one for ours. And we're not trying to make that a requirement.
And speaking of a good list of reasons to touch base with you, when people want to meet with you, what is the website that they will go to and the process that they will go through with you?
Well, as of today, so our website is crimsonadvantage.com. You could search for me on Google, and you'll probably find that, and maybe some very old golf records, depending on how many pages you click through. But no, crimsonadvantage.com is the place. You'll learn a little bit about us. We don't put a ton on our website. We've got some case studies. We've got some of the cooler companies that we work with. But what we're doing as early as this week, like when folks are listening to this potentially, we're making it to where we ask you a couple questions. There's a couple yes, no's, and drop downs, that sort of thing. And it's like a 60-second conversation where we learn a little bit about your business, and we'll reach out with some information that we've started to do in our audit of your business and your competitors, that sort of thing. So we try to make that first meeting, even though it's free and no questions asked, where you walk away going, wow, that was a very good use of 30 minutes or an hour of my time. And our bet is that in that time, you'll go, wow, there's probably a lot more that they still know, or I liked what they were talking about. I want to be able to have them help guide me through it. Totally fine if you don't want us to help guide you through it. If you have a nephew that just graduated with a marketing degree and has 1 million Instagram followers, like, hey, you should probably talk with them just as well. They might be cheaper than us, but our hope is reach out. We'll be able to give you some understanding of what you could be doing differently or better, or what your competitors are doing, and then we'll see how things go. And our goal is we do a good enough job that you realize that you were under investing in that particular part of your business before, and you hire people to replace us. You hire full-time employees to replace us. That's happened. Everybody has been happy about that, and we usually end up getting their friends' businesses as a result as clients. So anyways, that's the general flow, and the website's probably going to get a little bit bigger moving forward as we've started to get more traffic and people want to learn about us. We've spent a little bit more time investing in it, but we really just want to get to talking with people as soon as we can and see what we can share with them.
Thank you so much. Now, this is all about getting these results. This is why I love presenting the My Future Business show, because we get to share some great insights for people's real life journeys from the very get-go to where they are up until now. Now, as is normally the case, I will put URL links back to Louis and his wonderful team at crimsonadvantage.com. And in closing, Louis, I would just like to say thank you so very much for spending some time with me on the My Future Business show today.
I've loved it. I am an avid listener. I'm going to keep listening off into the future. You've got some great guests, and I'm honored to hopefully join, even if it's far down the list in terms of important people. I'm excited to see how things go and what other businesses we're going to keep track of moving forward as well.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.